Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. So as we wait to start in the Anthony Kirkland case, there are so many questions to talk about. There's so many things to talk about in this case. And I'm happy that I'm not going to be by myself talking about it. Joining me right now is Law and Crime's very own Ronn Blitzer. Ron, great to see you.
Great to be here. Good morning.
Now, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to you about this case yet, so I'm going to ask you from the beginning. In your perspective, the reason we have this sentencing hearing, the second one, is because the prosecutor in this case made what the Ohio Supreme Court said was a very prejudicial comment. He basically said to the jury that, look, this guy is already in life in prison because of 2 other murders that he pled guilty to. If you do not find him for the death penalty, these are basically going to be freebies for him because there's really no punishment then. One, do you think that's a prejudicial comment and warranting a second trial, a second sentencing hearing? And 2, is it really going to make a difference after everything we're seeing and hearing in this case?
All right, so to address your first question, yeah, I think that was an extremely prejudicial statement to make. I think it's absurd. Based on that prosecutor's logic, someone who has committed a previous crime for which they would then get a death penalty would then be able to get away with committing any other crime, and it would be considered a freebie unless he gets the death penalty. What if this wasn't additional murders? What if he stole a candy bar from a store? Would a prosecutor say, oh, that's a freebie because he's already serving life, you should kill him for this? No, that would be ridiculous. And so, to me, it doesn't matter that this was a horrifying murder case. The fact that he's already serving a punishment for something else does not mean that you then have to up the ante and kill him just because he did something afterwards. It's not a freebie. This is how the legal system works. There's only so far you can go, but you can't just use that as an excuse for the death penalty.
And after everything we're seeing, would it really have made a difference? Because this case is really strong, and he is admitting himself in police interviews the detail of how he killed these 4 women. Does it even matter what the prosecutor said?
Right, so that's the thing. I think he will very likely get the death penalty here again. I think there is an excellent chance that he would have gotten the death penalty the first time around if the prosecutor hadn't opened up his mouth and made that stupid comment. So, yeah, you could say, oh, it wasn't prejudicial because it would have happened anyway. There is an argument for that, but you still can't say something like that, and that just opens it up to the defense to say, hey, we need a different hearing here, and I think they made the right call.
You know, what we're showing as Ron and I are talking, that is Joe Dieters. That's him right there. That's the prosecutor who made that inappropriate comment, and now he's trying this case again. You can only imagine how awkward and frustrating that is for him. But I always like to put a face on who we're talking about. So one of the victims here is Esme Kenny. She was a 13-year-old girl, the last and final victim of this serial killer. We're happy that's the last person, but the youngest of his victims. I want to play you the deposition of Lisa Kenny. This is the mother of Esme. And she provided a taped deposition that was used in court. I believe she provided about a month before proceedings began. She did not make the trip to the courtroom, but it's used and brought into evidence nonetheless. Let's explain, and we can learn a little bit more about this horrific story from the mother herself. Take a look. It's tough to listen to the family members of these young victims, but it's even more difficult when you think about being there and trying to interview her and seeing what she's going through. Really tough stuff. And I want to talk more about this with Ronn Blitzer. Ron, we talked about in the break the idea of what the family members are going through. You said it best that they had thought that this was the conclusion of their case. And you saw the timestamp there, June 8th, 2018. She's back talking about her daughter after this guy was already convicted and sentenced to death.
Yeah, it couldn't have been easy for people to testify at the sentencing hearing the first time around. You hear the mother talking about what happened, and it's such a harrowing ordeal to have to relive that experience on the stand, and she did it, and she thought that they got the outcome that she wanted, and then because of a technicality, now we have to do this all over again. And not only that, as the prosecutor who's responsible for this, how do you then tell your witness, we have to do this again, and it's my fault, and I'm going to be the one to ask you these questions again, and now to have to do this and have to face the person.
Do you sense there's like an annoyance there? Like when she has, what do you want me to do now? You know what I mean? You made the mistake.
Yeah, I mean, It's complicated, I'm sure, if you're the mother of the victim here, because I'm sure there's anger towards the prosecutor, but at the same time, she may understand, it's an emotional time. People make mistakes. You say something that is just slightly over the line. But at the same time, she has to work with the prosecution to get the desired outcome.
It's not easy. It's not easy from multiple levels. We'll take a quick break and we'll talk more about the Anthony Kirkland case. Stay tuned. Okay, everybody, so that's the deposition of Lisa Kenny. We are going to pull out of that because we are live right now in that Ohio courtroom. I want to show a feed if we can. It hasn't started just yet. That's a live shot. I'm here with Ronn Blitzer. We're talking about this case. We're waiting for it to start. Ron, interesting case to follow, and I believe pathologists are going to be called to the stand today. You know what's interesting about this case? I said it before. It's almost like a mini trial in the sentencing hearing because this jury never heard the details of this crime before, any of these crimes.
Yeah, it's all fresh to these people. Normally, when you have a sentencing phase, it's the same jury who convicted, and then they already are familiar with the facts of the case, and now you're just hearing certain factors from either side regarding whether or not the person should be given the death penalty. Here you have it really is like a new trial because all of the information is coming out again. The only difference for the jury is these aren't just allegations, and it's in the context of this happened, this person is guilty of this, now what do we do about it?
Right, right. That's what's so interesting about it. I also find it strange trying to understand what is the defense going to argue here. We believe they're going to take the position that, okay, this guy suffered from some sort of mental disease or defect and could not control his actions. He said before, I can't control myself. How do you separate an evil individual from a mentally ill person who can't control their actions? What is that line? Can you explain it?
I personally can't. I don't have the
You're letting me down, Ron.
Training to do that. But what I can say is that it is really complicated because unless you have a jury who is really well versed in this sort of thing, you could have a defense call an expert to say something and make an argument and say this crossed the line from evil behavior to mental illness, because the average person can't understand how someone in their right mind would do such a thing.
No one can understand it, but that jury's going to have to make that determination in this case. We are live in that courtroom right now. Not a great shot of that witness. Hopefully it clears up a little bit, but she's the first witness of the day, so let's go live into that Ohio courtroom. Okay, everybody, it's important to understand these details, and I want to talk to Ronn Blitzer about it a little bit more right now. So the idea of this jury understanding the details of what happened to these victims is so crucial. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's so crucial in order for them to determine those aggravating factors, right, in terms of the death penalty. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes. In order to make a decision on the death penalty, the prosecution needs to show that there were aggravating factors, that this wasn't just your run-of-the-mill murder case, that there was something about this that warrants a higher penalty than just life in prison.
Right, so this isn't a typical kind of case where someone comes home, sees their wife cheating, their husband cheating, they go into a fit of rage, or a killing of some other nature. This was a heinous attack against 4 other individuals once he was released from prison. But the idea here, and I thought this was interesting yesterday, we learned that he burned the bodies, according to him, not to hide evidence, but because he wanted to do a proper burial rite for them, almost like the Vikings did. Now, if we believe that, does that take away from the heinous nature of what he did? Wouldn't it be different if he was trying to dispose of evidence?
It really depends on the juror. You could make that argument and say, no, he was not trying to mutilate these bodies, that he was trying to respectfully dispose of them. But at the same time, he's still the person who killed these people to begin with. So it's tough, I think, for a jury to wrap their heads around the fact that the killer was trying to be respectful to these people. So the defense could point to that and say, oh, well, this is a sign of mental illness. That's a mitigating factor.
Right.
But at the same time, I think just the fact that it was done to begin with is going to be too much for the jury to overcome. Okay, well, let's go back live into court. We have a new witness on the stand. Again, this is the Anthony Kirkland case.
Okay, as we prepare for this next witness, we're going to take a break on our end, and then when we come back, we'll go straight into the Kirkland case. Want to sign off Ronn Blitzer. Thanks so much for coming on today, Ron.
Glad to be here.
All right, and we are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. There's a lot going on here. You don't want to miss anything here on Law and Crime. Stay tuned.